Exciting.
It is exciting.
Oh my gosh. They just flooded in. Oh. I love that. That was a bunch of people. Ooh, whoa.
Sierra, you're muted.
Okay, here I go. Hello, everyone. So today's Tuesday Night Live is going to be different than the other ones you might have seen before. Before we dive into our topic of discussion, it is imperative that we speak the names of some of the lives that have been tragically lost, there's a very short list, to a system that has failed the Black community for 400 years. George Steiny Jr., Atatiana Jefferson, Trayvon Martin, Alton Sterling, Khalif Browder, Philando Castile, Eric Garner, Sandra Bland, Mike Brown, Breonna Taylor, Tamir Rice, Ayanna Jones, George Floyd. The ages of those that we have lost range from 8 years old to 59 years old. We say their names. And in the words of civil rights icon Fannie Lou Hamer, nobody's free until everybody's free. Now to you, Dion.
Thank you, Sierra, for a very powerful opening. Thank you to everybody for being here. I'm excited to be here. It's always a fun chance when I get a camera and I get to talk. There's two of my favorite things. Camera loves me. I love to talk, so it works very well. Hopefully, y'all will enjoy what we have tonight. Like Sierra said, it'll be a little bit different. I'm hoping we can reflect more, be a little more interactive with today's TNL and talk about some of the current things that are happening and hopefully be a little more constructive about what we're talking about and how we're moving forward with the movement that has not just started. It's really been here the whole time, but that's really came to a head for a lot of people to see. But before we even do that, I have another host with me, my guest host. She would like to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. It's so great to be here. My name is Allie Mclean. I use pronouns she, her, hers. And I just graduated from JMU last May with a major in media arts and design and constitutional journalism. And I actually was the student government president last year. So it's so awesome to be here with Dion so we can really talk about a lot of things that right now we really need to dive deep into and like really be intentional about and really take the space and the time to really see what's going on in our world and what do we do as Dukes really to support our community and really be there for one another.
I forgot the whole introduction. Was I supposed to do that? I'm a communication studies. I graduate. I was about to say major. I graduated in May. Yes. Communication studies, organizational communication concentration with a minor in computer information systems. And I was involved in a whole host of things. I see a lot of familiar faces or names, I should say. So I just figured skip the formalities and get right into it. And with that, we have a few objectives we wanted to do. Like I said, we were talking about or want to get into reflecting on your personal experiences when it comes to dealing with racial identity and cultural identity. We talked earlier about what we wanted the show to be. And we understand that this is not the typical audience for this type of discussion. Quite frankly, this is a predominantly white institution. And so with that, we have to take a different approach with how we talk about these things. It's interesting because there are a lot of feelings to navigate when trying to cross boundaries and have conversations about racial and cultural identity. I know personally for me, there's a lot of things that I can't say or a lot of actions that I can't take when I want to reprimand somebody or retaliate or, speak out against some injustice, but I don't want to be taken the wrong way. And I don't want my message to be lost in what I look like or what stereotypes I might be putting off. So we want to talk about how do you get through that. But before all of that, specifically to anybody who is a person of color right now, kind of talking to your experience a little bit. Right now it's crazy, right? It feels like we're supposed to be in the streets, on the ground, boots on the ground, strapped up, signs on, mask on, out there. I feel like I should be doing more, right? But we can't all be out there. I saw a post on Instagram and it said, don't be, upset for filling your lane. Some of us need to stay inside. Some of us need to survive and just be, right? Some of us need to try and educate, but not necessarily be out on the front lines with picket signs, right? Some of us need to be inside doing things like this. It's crazy. I'm specifically speaking to Aaliyah and Sierra. It felt like earlier it was so much easier, right? But I didn't expect to feel this way when I actually got in front of people. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I think something that's so important too is that like this topic is something that's so heavy. Like you're always thinking about it. And as a man of color, of course, only speaking to what you told us earlier, I mean, you're thinking about this every single day. Like when you go to class, when you go out, you're literally always thinking about how are people going to perceive me? And I know for me, I kind of spoke with you all earlier, as a woman of color, I'm always thinking, what can I do to validate myself through other people? So of course I want to say, oh, I was SJ president, because I think if I say that, people will respect me differently. Because if I don't, they're not going to respect me at all. And so it's those things that like in this time, like you probably have these heavy burdens on you where you really think you need to be protesting all day and all night. But like me and Dion were saying, I mean, right now we're also in a pandemic, and a pandemic that is literally affecting marginalized communities at that. And so honestly, if you need to survive, do the best that you can, because we need everyone in every area right now. We need educators. We need those that are going to justice systems of this. We need the protesters. We need people everywhere in this, and honestly do the best that you can. And I think right now people are just so heavy because you feel like you have the world on your back. You feel like you have to do so much. But honestly, donating to Black businesses, being intentional about what you're doing, who you're talking to, and also take the time to use self-care. Because I mean, social media right now is just draining.
I feel like what you're talking about leads right into, what was it earlier? The performance activism. It seems like if you're not going to be out on the street, that's where you should be putting out and using your voice. But it is tiring. Every time I log on to some social media platform, it's just videos upon videos of craziness happening to unsuspecting lives, or there's huge posts about people talking about their experiences, and it just gets a lot. And I feel like, well, if I don't want to be a part of that, and I don't necessarily want to be out on the street, what is there for me to do, right? I've had a few of speaking to like white people, I've had a few of my friends just reach out to me and ask me how I'm doing, I don't know whether, as a white person, I don't know whether you think you have to be this, super prominent activist and in front of everybody's face and really show everyone that you're supporting a cause. I think if you do what these people did for me, I literally got texts. If I showed you on my phone, it was two like pretty sincere texts like, hey, I know things are crazy right now. I just want to let you know that I understand this is happening. I'm not overlooking it. And I felt better, and we're going to get more into that, but I just want to say, like, your expectations or our expectation for you to help is not to be a hero for the whole cause. You understand what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I think it honestly is just, Dion, like putting in this lifestyle changes. And we'll talk more about that later as well. But I mean, I actually just came back from a restaurant about an hour ago. And, we're eating. And of course, the conversation on the table right now is how are we feeling about all of this, And we're really just talking about who has reached out to you, who hasn't. And you even see that genuineness. If like you are a friend of a person of color, have you even checked on them today? Have you asked them how they're doing? Are you just putting more burdens on them? And it's these simple things like that how are you being their friend? Are you actually curious about their experience in this world versus like friends that are just texting you, oh, this is so wild and this is crazy right now. Like, yeah, don't you think? And like, what do you think? Of course, for me as a person of color, what do you think I'm feeling like? And so actually, well, our dinner though, we're just talking and we have people just staring at us at the other table. And literally, we're like, you know, of course, in a situation like this, you're like, why are they staring at us? And why are they acting like this? And so, of course, and for us, it's like people are just not understanding. And no one's asking you to be a hero. But again, just reflect on who you are and just provide support, be a friend, and be a sincere friend at that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The lifestyle changes piece that Aaliyah was referring to, again, this is a movement that has been started long before this, but in order for it to continue with the same ferocity, with the same gravity that it has had, we need to start changing what we do on the daily. And so it's kind of a personal thing that I had, but I figured in order for me to do my best to keep this at the forefront for the people that see me use my platform, I started my own podcast. I call it a forum because it really takes all different shapes, but it's called The Gray Area, where controversy roams free and so does the dialogue. It's on YouTube, it's on Instagram, Spotify, Apple. You search it up, The Gray Area, me. I'm starting to put out what it is that I do experience in the daily. It's kind of weird, right? Because I am a Black male. So what exactly can I do that doesn't put my life in danger, but does change so I am fighting for this cause? You know what I'm saying? So I'm trying to educate. And again, going back into my lane, I've realized that, and this is something that I don't know if a lot of people, white people, realize, but it takes a lot of stamina to have these conversations. It really does. And depending on who you are from the diaspora, you're not going to stand in these conversations. A lot of people will not sit and try to expand their vocabulary and try to, you know, say things that don't make people feel uncomfortable so everybody can have a constructive conversation. Because some people are just mad. Like, do you get that? You see what I'm saying?
That's so good. That's so good. And I think too, like, for your point of perspective, it's like you want to be the educator, right? But then you have some people that are like placing all their friends to be the educator. And it's like even these changes of like, I am not here to educate you. Just because I'm a Black woman doesn't mean always come to me to ask you to help you solve this. And it's like these lifestyle changes of even like, for me, something I think about every day is this movement is my life. You know, like this movement right now for some people is something new for everyone that are now just learning about it. But literally, this has been something I've always had my principle at JMU. It's always lifting a minority person up with me wherever I go. And so it's even these lifestyle changes that me and my friends were talking about earlier. It's like, how are you bringing a person of color with you? You know, I went to a protest yesterday. And again, protests, you have to have them because you have to raise awareness and everything like that. But for me, I sit back and I'm saying, who is just here because they feel like they have to be here? Who is here because they're performing? And again, what are you actually doing every single day to make sure a minority person is heard, to make sure a Black person is in the room? What are you literally doing to lift them up? And I think that's where this piece of equity comes in, is everyone's like, oh, we need equal rights. No, we don't need equal rights. We need equity. We need literally, you have to have, so for those that don't understand what equity is, it's like, okay, equality is like, we're all on this like one level. There's this awesome animation I wish I could show you all right now, but we're all on this one level. But with equity, it's like, maybe for me, I need someone just pushing me up a little bit because maybe you don't need that. Maybe you're just tall enough to have that. And so literally in this situation, you need equitable justice. You literally need people out here lifting people up with them. So I know at JMU, I always make sure, okay, how am I really bringing a minority person up with me in this space? And I'm always being so cautious of that, even though I'm already living a life as a Black woman. And it's like these lifestyle changes, you cannot just go to a protest and stop. The work is not, that's where work is beginning there, but that's not the end all be all, you know? And it's just, even at JMU, like you have to talk about it because we're at a predominantly white institution. Like when is the last time you even talked to a Black student, or do you even have Black friends that you're really trying to connect with right now? And it's like those just day-to-day things you have to think about and you have to really dive in deeper with.
Man, so you hit it. You really hit it. I really hope that what you're saying is ringing true for a lot of people in here, because it is true. Everything that you're saying is true. The equity piece, I want to touch on that because how can you say that your policies, procedures, and I'm not just talking about JMU, first of all.
Of course, yeah.
This is about all structures in our society, in our country at least. Like, if you don't have genuine representation, from all the people involved in whatever you're trying to do, how can you say that all of your policies or structures are helping everybody involved, right? No, we don't have as many white people or as many Black people at JMU as possible, right? But if we have the right leadership or the right representative, like we did with Ms. McLean, things get done, people get heard. And so instead of having, huge masses of
That's
Black
good.
people come into places, or any demographic for that matter, you just need to listen. Like, that's really what you need to be doing, listening to the people that are trying to speak to you. Because, I just wanted to touch back on that.
That's
but
good.
The lifestyle changes that we're talking about, Aaliyah, we're on a different plane. You know what I'm saying? Like you said, we've been living this the whole time. So to put on an extra layer of, okay, I got to carry this with me. All right, it's my job to let somebody know that this is not right anymore. All right, it's my job to call them out, and I'll try to be constructive about it. To put that on is nothing. It's nothing new, but I think to throw it, back with a white person, this is alarming. I would think it's very shocking, especially because, some people say that we didn't actually experience slavery, right? But we fight so hard against the injustice that happened years ago, hundreds of years ago. Actually, not even hundreds of years ago. We're talking about stuff that just happened a few weeks ago. But we've continued fighting for stuff hundreds of years ago. The same way that we carry that, wouldn't there be a white guilt just as big? Like, dang, I haven't really addressed this, and it's getting to how many hundreds of years, and I haven't had a conversation. Dang, what am I supposed to do? And that's where we're at today. That's what we want to work through today. No,
that's so good.
It is, and it's not going to stop here. Sorry, go ahead.
And I think I probably want to say it, but we really were just talking about this earlier. And I think for some people that aren't people of color, you're like, I didn't ask to be white, I didn't ask to be this, I didn't ask to be put in these situations. And I feel that no one asked to be put in these situations, but like you're saying, because of our ancestors and because what has been done in the past, and literally what our United States has been built off of, that's just a system. We literally have to go in and break our systems. It is our responsibility, because we're talking about these generational curses. And of course, that's maybe not the word. People are like, curses, what? But like, literally, we have been engraved into these systems that have to be broken completely. And until we do that, it is our responsibility, because we're not having justice, as you see, because we're dealing with the same problems that we're dealing with back in 1619. How crazy is that? Because if I thought my ancestors told me I'd be done with this, I wouldn't. And I just think it's not even a burden that people should look at. Like, no one wants to sit down and have these conversations. Like, I think for people, you're like, oh, well, you're a person of color, you're probably used to confrontation. But like, no one wants to have to deal with these conversations. But I think what's important is, as a higher education system and as students, we're here to learn. We're here to be the next leaders, and it's here for us. It's our responsibility to say, what can I do to make this better for the next generation? And how can I leave this better? So it's not even a burden. It literally is just having compassion for humans and realizing that the systems are they're not broken because they were built like this. And it's time to redo them all. And so it's just those simple points like that.
Burden, it's a responsibility. It's a responsibility.
Can I chime in real quick? I want to share the image that Aaliyah was alluding to. I'm not sure if this is the exact one, but this is a very popular one in terms of equality versus equity.
Yeah, that's good.
I see it.
Share my screen real quick. Here we go.
Yeah, that is the picture.
Yes. So as you can see, on the left side, no equality, everyone has the same thing, right? But as you can see, that's not working for everyone. On the right, we have equity. So we see that the man who is perceived as an adult, he does not need a box because he's tall enough to see over the fence. Of course, we have the second person in red. He needs one box. That's what he needs to be able to see over the fence. And then the person in the purple, they need 2 boxes to see over the fence, right? So that is that. And I also wanted to I think just briefly touch on how Aaliyah was talking about the generational curses, and then Dion was also alluding to, this is what our ancestors have been through. And something that I always tell people is there's a TED Talk called How Racism Makes Us Sick. And I'll attach that in the comment section later on. But it basically says, of course, racism equals stress. And stress is what makes our bodies, it can make our bodies like dysfunctional. That's why the African American community has higher rates of certain diseases and things of that nature. And then also trauma, when our ancestors experienced that trauma of being enslaved, it affects your DNA. And this happens to any group of people who experience trauma. So when that's in your DNA, it's passed down generation to generation. So though our ancestors were first brought here 400 years ago, we as Black people are still feeling that trauma of slavery. So that is why when we talk about our ancestors and we refer to our ancestors so much, it's because they are still within us and we are still here to fight for them and for each other. So I just wanted to say that.
That's good.
I love it. It's kind of weird, pull the curtain back a little bit, to have some type of platform to say this type of stuff. It's very weird because I don't think it's normal. We're definitely flipping the script. What is most of our history written about? Like the stuff that white people did. We don't talk about Black people. So just to get to talk about us in a better way just feels good, just feels right.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, I think it'd be a cool time to do breakout rooms. Like we were talking about being more interactive. So we've just kind of reflected for you, talked a little bit for you, what our experience has been talking about our racial or cultural identities, what advantages, the little there were, I don't know if there were any that were stated, and disadvantages that come because of that. And we want to give you the chance to do the same. Know that there's no perfect way to do this. We do ask that you do it intentionally though, and go all the way through it. It might be a little awkward because you're talking to people you don't know, but that's how you grow, right? So we're gonna do some breakout rooms where you're gonna discuss your experiences about your racial identity and cultural identity.
that has been like influenced by or like influences my interactions with others is like my sexual identity. I have had like explain that to people, and I have had to explain like why
muted myself. Is that okay? I hope it's okay. It's always weird to break barriers, but I'll do it. I'll do it. I see people adding, so I'm trying to like hold off before I speak. But I see a lot of people on camera, so I'm guessing conversations went well, or people enjoyed themselves. Hopefully you did. I know my breakout room was pretty popping, but again, I talk a lot, so it could have just been me. But I know it wasn't me. I know I'm not crazy. People were actually speaking. I heard a lot of good stuff. It's a lot of people. I want to ask for like, if you had, did anybody have anything in their breakout session? And we're gonna limit this, right? Anybody have anything super impactful that they wanted to share? I love when people talk. So was there that? If it was, speak now. Love to hear it.
And we had 4 groups, right? Or 3 groups. Maybe we could have one person from each group kind of just share a snippet of what, so even the facilitators, if they want to do that as well, but maybe just one person that feels in their heart and feels ready, maybe just share a little bit of what you kind of learned, or maybe you're just curious about really continuing this conversation on as we kind of move forward.
Hey, that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay.
This is not the end all be all of these types of conversations, and you're not supposed to be all the way equipped or feel the most comfortable in these situations, but it's a step, right? And moving forward with that, I want to go to specifics about when you're having conversations about this stuff. We thought a little bit earlier about some tips, and we kind of split them depending on where you're coming from, because we just talked about there's differences between being a person of color and tackling racism and injustice in this system in our country, and being a white person or being somebody who's not a person of color, right? So I guess we just jump into it.
Yeah, it'd be good to just jump into it.
Yeah.
Definitely. Okay, for the first one, I know this is always on my mind, always on my heart. I mean, I told a lot of people in my group, because we kind of talked about, I'll just kind of wrap it up, of like what it really is identity. And for a lot of people, this is like a new thing you're really diving into, right? When you make decisions, you may not be thinking about your identity. And so now after this conversation, I kind of told my group, we can't solve everything in an hour. This is something you cannot learn 400 years worth of just history and injustice. This is just a starting point. And hey, be glad that you're here and that you're learning and you're moving forward in this direction. And so honestly, as you kind of move forward in these conversations, right, because now you're probably curious, and you might, it's okay to say to your person of color friend, what are your experiences? Like, what's going on? And that's totally fine. But making sure you're understanding your intentions in the conversations that you have moving forward, right? And so we're kind of here. We know our intention to kind of read you our 3 things. It's really to think about your identity and how we move forward as students at JMU. And so when you're talking to your friends moving forward from this, really thinking, am I being a true ally, or am I kind of having the savior complex? And for those that, may not know what savior complex, it's kind of like going in thinking that you're saved and you're this hero in this community. And realistically, it's honest sometimes just taking a step back and listening, being that active listener and just saying genuinely, what can you really do? And so really just make sure you understand your intentions. And before you go into anything, say, why am I truly doing this? Am I doing this to glorify myself? And just because I'm a good person, because I went ahead and did this conversation? Am I at this program because I feel like I have to? Why am I doing this? Is it because I want to be a better student at JMU? Always understand that why piece, and just, as you move forward in these conversations, because they're never going to be easy, but they don't stop here. They don't stop.
Hey, and so one of the things that is real, thank you, Aaliyah, again. One of the things that I based the gray area off of was just asking why, right? So if your main reason or your why is just, I'm uneducated about this, I don't know about it, and I want to know more, that's perfectly fine. You don't have to be doing this to, again, go off and do some performative activism or show off to your friends, hey, I know this many facts, People do it. I have Black friends. No, you don't. Nobody needs to know. But when the time comes, your silence or the way that you tackle this situation or approach these conversations, if you've practiced or you've been intentional about learning how, it'll show. And if you haven't been, it'll also show. So your why can be as elaborate or as simple as possible. But as long as you know it, you're good. Stick by that. Something specifically for those who are not people of color, for my white folks. It's gonna be awkward. Like, it's gonna be awkward. There have been so many situations or conversations that I have with my white counterparts, and we get onto a topic and they just freeze. And it's like you get caught in between not wanting to step on anybody's toes and trying to find the right words and your vocabulary and what you know how to say. Like, that's fine. Go through that. Go through it, because the more you hedge, the more we stop at it. Think about it like this. Like, it's way more awkward if you were to say, like, that black guy over there. All right, okay, I said it. Right? Like, that's awkward. But if I'm just like, if you're trying to describe somebody to me, this is just a basic scenario. If you're trying to describe somebody over there, like, you see the black guy over there with the afro, he's got a pig in his hair, he has a book bag, he's wearing like a blue jacket. You see what I'm talking about? Like, practice being more natural. I know that I'm black. I know that you're white. I know that, you know, like, it's reality. It's the reality of the situation we're in, right? So when we're talking about this stuff, don't shy away from it. Use what you have. Again, be intentional. And if you're trying to get into the conversation because you don't know a lot about the subject and you want to know more, then that's what you should be saying when you intentionally come out and say, where are you from? Like, I hear an accent. I first arrived as a first. Siri, what are you talking about? Anyway, don't back away. Don't back away. Use your why and put that out there to give you more confidence to be in the conversation. Am I making sense? Making sense?
That's so good. And I think also kind of on that, it just goes back to your true intentions of like, we're all just in this together, and knowing, you know, what you're doing, and like, don't make it awkward. Like, no one is blaming you, but again, it's just your responsibility. And so I think that was all, you hit it on the spots.
Oh, this isn't even on the list that we had on the side, but Aaliyah talked about it being a burden to deal with all this stuff. It's not a burden, it's a responsibility. So on top of getting more comfortable in these conversations, when they come up, it's not enough to say, oh, I didn't even know about that. That's like, really? I loathe it. I loathe this response is, I would never do something like that. Like, that must be so terrible. You know, that type of response, that's on the order of like, I wasn't even paying attention to this stuff. And it just feels really disrespectful, you know. And being a person of color, I've always felt like it's having to kind of do the work of 3 to 1, where you're sitting and not really knowing what you don't know and not looking at what you don't know. I'm having to point out to you where what you don't know is not right. And then I'm having to show you what is right and work around all of the guilt or shame or whatever you might feel because you're not as well versed in dealing with all of this race and cultural identity stuff. You understand what I'm saying? So it's your responsibility to be prepared. And that, again, does not mean you need to know every movement, every hashtag that's out there. Social media also isn't the place to look for validation. If you want to be making a real contribution, donate, you know, try to educate yourself, have these conversations with people that don't look like you or with people that look like you. I had somebody talk to me when they sent me the text, they were like, I'm having these conversations with my family, but I'm just not, I'm not knowing what to do. They're going somewhere, but it's just kind of weird. I'm like, keep doing that. That is enough. That's going to pass down. You know, when you're a parent, you're going to remember this is what this felt like. You're going to know that it's important to have this conversation, and it's trickle down effect. We're going to see a good trickle down effect from practices like that. This next one was more so for people of color. Do you want it, or shall I?
Yeah, you can go ahead and do it.
So
that's good.
As a person of color, when you're having conversations with white people or anybody who doesn't really understand your identity, it is for Black people. I love to generalize, but specifically in this conversation, retaliation isn't always the goal. To make somebody feel awkward or feel left out because you're upset at what happened in the past, or because you're upset at how our system treats people that look like you, that's not constructive. And it's something that hurts me or it makes me mad, because when you look at the riots that are happening right now and all these protests, there's also talk of looting, right? There's also talk of people who aren't necessarily there with the right values. And that just, it's hard to keep sustainable change when people keep tarnishing your image, right? And so for people of color, making a white person feel ostracized or trying to recreate the marginalization for them because you feel like, yeah, this is my payback, that's not the way. And I may not even be speaking, I may just be speaking to myself, because that is a real thing. I also have to let you know, as much as I'm trying to help, as much as, you know, as nice as I try to be, sometimes prejudice will rear its ugly head, and that'll happen. That'll happen.
I think that's
But
so good, and that's such a big step on even you saying that and being vulnerable, and like, you know, I do feel that way because sometimes you are so angry, and like you're saying, like, this is not just things that we've lived, this is our ancestors, like this has been passed down, and so you get to a point where you're just so angry, you're so fed up, but just knowing that you know, revenge is not this only way, you know, and like us seeking revenge, and I think even for people that aren't people of color, stop looking at these protests and saying they're so violent, oh my goodness, they're so scary. You're looking at the wrong things, kind of questioning, why are we having to do this in the first place? We've tried to be peaceful, and now you just cannot be peaceful anymore. And you know, it's just like you're look for, like, instead of saying, oh my gosh, they're looting, look to say, why are they doing that? You know, where have we gone wrong? What can we do? Because I mean, at this point, this is how people are communicating, because people are not listening. And so I just think that was a really good point and an awesome vulnerability. And just even for that, and I think for me, I have another tip for you all, like your fourth tip, tip 4, we'll put it in the chat, but challenge yourself all the time. And so never become complacent on where you are, the people you're around. And so sometimes, of course, I know for me, I'll say my kind of lifestyle, my experience, for my 1787 group, you know, I hated JMU. You know, I came to JMU, I wanted friends, I'm looking for friends. And literally, it's kind of like this magnet effect. Only people were going, you know, people that look like them, they were kind of hanging around, you know? So it was like all the white girls would hang out with the white girls. And for me, I was literally the only, I think there's only like 2 people of color in my group. It was just like us together, kind of sticking by each other. And, you know, for me, I felt so sad, I felt so bad. And so at JMU, you know, it being a predominantly white institute, I mean, I even say, when was the last time I had a Black professor? I had to study abroad in Ghana to have a Black professor. Come on now. And so it's even like, challenge yourself, look around at your friends. Are you being diverse? Are you trying to get out of your comfort zone? Are you only going to your comfort zone? And so in so many times, it's like, well, I don't want to be uncomfortable. We don't, but we are at this point where it is our responsibility to be uncomfortable. And if we get used to this, it will not feel that way, because it's so natural to us to always say, look at my friend group. Are you being diverse? Are even thoughts? Are they diverse? You know, why am I thinking this way? And so I always say, instead of looking to blame, really challenge yourself in those moments to, 1, be an active listener, but to 2, take a step back and say, why are they doing this? You know, what can I do? And who am I around? Because sometimes we don't know it, but we're doing this thing where we only hang out with people we want to hang out with, that we think like us, look like us, and all these things. But again, they're just actually not being gatekeepers, because now you're just putting more barriers on other people because you just left out the brown girl in your group. And it's just like, even those things we have to question and think about. And it's like that lifestyle change. Always empower someone else to be with you, making sure when you're in the room, who's making the decisions, you know, is it just all people of color, or is it just all white men, you know? And we talked about intersectionality in our group. It's like, really think beyond these things, look around you all the time, and just always challenge yourself, never become complacent.
The word for that, being in a group of like-minded individuals and there's no real separation between how you think, it's called a homophily. We don't want that. We don't want homophilies. We don't want that. That's a very good point. To kind of build on that, and I know that we're at the end of our time, I just want to say that I came to JMU because I said I wanted to see how the other side lives. I literally said that. High school, I was like, I've been around a lot of Black people. I've been around a lot of Hispanics. I want to see how the white people live. And that's where I tossed my higher education hat. I just wanted a different cultural experience, and it has afforded me so much. But think about that. Notice how if I came to a predominantly white institution, I can use that as social capital, right? That is a benefit. But what if I went to a historically Black college or university, or a HBCU? Those don't even have the same connotation as a PWI. those have more connotations of like, they don't have the best, in my opinion. And there's something we could talk about. Is that how I've been talked about? When I think about Howard or Virginia Union University, my mother graduated from VUU, yet I look at that place with a little bit of disdain compared to JMU. Like, it's not the same. There's something different. That's something I need to address. But notice how in our society, white is more beneficial.
That was such a good point. And I have so many friends all the time. I have friends that went to Hampton, Howard, all these places. And no matter the schools that are literally making change and are the like catalysts for just Black influential people in our society, we're always told, I mean, if you go there, you might not get a job. And it's like, why are we thinking that white is always better? Like, at a primarily white institution, why does mean my education is better than there? Because honestly, who knows what I could have been if I went to HBCU? And so it's like, I'm just honestly, and so it's just like, even like thinking through those conversations as a PWI, we owe that to our people and even to minority students that are here, because you have minority students on this campus that literally, I had a mentee text me today, feeling like, dang, I should have went to this HBCU. And I'm just like, don't feel, and it's like, and of course, like, yes, that's our culture, but like, why are we falling short to bringing our culture to JMU? And why have we avoided that? And for so long, you're so right. And it means looking around in your classrooms, where are the people of color? When do you seek for them? And when are they kind of involved in this idea of please share your opinion, please share your experience, because they aren't being asked, and I think it's even all the time, people will say, oh yeah, you need Black students, go to CMUS and find them. And for those that don't know what CMUS is, that's the Center for Multicultural Student Services. And it's like, why are you kind of lumping students into one area? CMUS is not our end all be all. We are literally JMU. It's all of our duty. It's all of our place to be everywhere throughout JMU. So when me and my roommate and 10 out of my friends, we made our organization Women of Color, our main thing was we did not want people to feel like you had to be so just like, confined to CMUS. Because yes, we love CMUS. We all do. But literally, it's like, then it just makes other people kind of look over us. And people are like, oh, you don't know where the minority are? Go to CMUS. They're in there. And, and it's like, we have to literally dive into that. Why do we even put students in that situation where they feel like they have to go to a center to be seen, to be known, That was good.
Oh, you on it. See, because JMU is very siloed. And we have to, again, look at why it became that way. Part of a system. We thought diversity was the main thing, right? And it is. We want to see people like us, but inclusion is really the goal. Like, if I can say, or if I can ask myself, or if I ask myself, is this person have access to the same resources, the same support, and is as comfortable as this person in this classroom? And if any time I ask that question, the answer is no, well, then I'm not meeting my goal, right? And so I think we are fortunate enough to have gone to JMU, where they put in a lot of effort into trying to create the space for each and every pocket or, people who want to belong. But, after a while, we have to make do with what we have. So instead of creating a whole nother organization for all the people like this to be in, well, I mean, start forcing people to be with each other. That might sound a little aggressive, right? But what's the worst that can happen? We learn from each other. We realize that, oh my gosh, you don't live like me. I want to know more about that. Like, I can have something I could learn from you. I know that, some of my white friends have told me, they've taught me to have a good time, like to not necessarily care so much about what people are thinking about you. Hey, perfect example. What is it during rush week when fraternities and sororities do the craziest stuff on campus, right? They're dressing up, they're going to classes in costumes, they're chanting, they're yelling. There's huge groups of people doing who knows what. And it's like, I want to do that. I want to not care as much as that, and that's something that I've been able to do partly because I go to a predominantly white institution. I mean, you can look at what's happening in Harrisonburg versus in our breakout room. We talked about what's happening in Richmond, right? There's two totally different climates in these places. I could go outside here and feel relatively safe. Now, relatively in terms of, I know that there's not as much rioting and stuff happening. This is still a predominantly white area, right? And so there are some things that I've thought could happen to me here where I do fear for my safety, or I move a little different. But in terms of what's happening right now, this place is generally better because it does not have a lot of people of color. I think.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that a lot, and there's so many things I could say about that in that situation. But I mean, to all the minority students I kind of speak with and talk to, I mean, like they are struggling, you know, like for them, they just like feel like regardless they aren't being seen, regardless of us, what they want to do, it's kind of like they're being overlooked. Or for some people, it's like I don't know what it is, but I just feel like as a higher education system, it is our responsibility, and I'm putting this on JMU, like institution, like not as students, institution. I think as an institution, our mission statement, I'm like kind of winging it, but it's to kind of have meaningful lives, live meaningful lives. We want our students to be engaged, enlightened citizens, right? And I feel like in order to do that, you have to literally kind of go into this and say, how am I really teaching students to do this? You know, and like look at our general education program. When do you really learn about these histories? When do you talk about diversity? Even we are to JMU. I mean, I was an OPA, people fall asleep during it because for them, it's like, this does not matter. This does not have anything to do with me. And so it's honestly even challenging those systems as an institution, what can we really do to equip our students to feel like that? Because some students are scared to like leave their house right now. Some students are feeling this way. Some students do not feel safe. Some people do not feel supported into this. And so I even think that's a great point. Like, is it just representation or is it really inclusion? And so that was something I challenged SJ this year. Are we actually being inclusive? So when we even look at our programs, even to the simplest things, is there closed captioning? Are we actually, you know, are we making everyone virtual? Are we making people turn their cameras on because you don't know their home environment? What are we really doing to really meet students where they are? And I think that plays into the bigger system of JMU. Even look at our students. Yes, probably white, we know that. But then let's look at class and social economic status. Where are we still missing the mark? Are we actually providing support for those of lower economic statuses? And those that are lower economic statuses, who are they? Are they mostly people of color, minority students? And so even that, it's like, really, how are you really supporting your students in this time, and really being equitable is something that you really have to think about and talk about. But did you want to, oh, sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, you're good. You're good. You're good. I'm piggybacking off of you. So it's like, if you finish, I can take it.
Yeah, go ahead. That's good.
Hey, all right. Okay. So my boss, he's to the right of me, my old boss, Michael McLean, right? Runner, founder of the Student Leadership Center, has afforded me the opportunity to understand that I don't need a title or a specific position or anything of that matter in order to affect change, in order to influence the people around me. And I was a part of the task force for inclusion, specifically for classroom inclusivity. And so you talk about what can we do there? We tried to have changes instituted, but because some professors, for lack of better training, because they didn't care, whatever the situation, they were able to deny certain initiatives or put certain things off to the side and say, well, you know, I have tenure or I have this. I don't necessarily need to do that. Students are here. I'm supposed to pour my knowledge into them. If they don't get it, that's not really my problem. I heard about that a lot. And so when we talk about trying to make these places better, we need the people who are doing the job of educating us to give 100% their all to making these places inclusive. I mean, right now, outside of diversity and inclusion, some professors get away with not even using Canvas. Like, how are we as students supposed to be as successful, you know, outside of this university if our professors, our educators are not doing all that they can to get us what we need? Like, there have been way too many situations where missed post dates or random assignments just kind of pop up on the timeline. It's like, whoa, where did that come from? Or a professor just decides not to use it, and then you get your grade at the end of the year. It's not about professors and teaching. It's about who's allowed to dictate what happens inside of our system, inside of JMU. And until we reprimand some of our most revered professors, some of our most revered faculty members, and actually put them through training that's sufficient to help people be comfortable in classes, to promote inclusive spaces, students can only do so much. students can only do so much before the person that they have to listen to for a grade tells them I don't care. You know what I'm saying? So that's a nod to the institutional level that you were talking about, Aaliyah, that we need change, and we can't be cutting programs that do the work of talking about diversity and inclusion. We can only make them better. So that's for faculty. As students, to make an inclusive classroom, it's not that hard. I realized this probably my junior year. I was like, I need people around me. I need to be talking. I need people that I can text for notes. So I would sit close to the front row, and whoever sat next to me or 2 seats next to me, whatever, I would just talk to them like, hey, you trying to start a group chat? Like, so we can get study notes or something like that. Immediately, I felt like I had somebody that I could rely on, which as a person of color in classes that aren't there, where there aren't many people like me, I have to do something, right? And so, in the classrooms, simple things like just talking to people, reaching out and asking questions, putting yourself out there, being vulnerable when we're doing discussions in class. These are the things that make our spaces feel more inclusive. I know it's worked for me. I do this and people are like, oh, they come to me after class, or they come to me in some situation where they see me like, hey, I remember you from saying this, and I just wanted to let you know that this is how I felt. Or, there were so many validating experiences where I got to see, because I put myself out there, other people felt comfortable to do the same. So making our classrooms inclusive really should be easier. As I said, it's harder because we have to listen to professors, but we have masses in those seats. So, if all students in there are saying, you're going to respect this person, you're going to respect when we're talking about these things. I mean, it's kind of up to the faculty at that point, the administration, the same way we're kind of looking at our government. It's up to them to reprimand the people who aren't doing the right work. See what I'm saying? Man.
That's so good. Dion, that's so good. And even like Ryan just put in the comments, kind of like this textbook idea. Oh, like I am so like, some professors will make you buy a $200 textbook, and then will say, I mean, you can afford to come to college, can't you? You can afford this textbook. And like, that is just one example of like, that is just like, okay, to be inclusive is really acknowledge. I mean, not everyone can come to college on a full ride, full scholarship, or with someone else paying for it, right? And so even those simple ways of trying to find online textbooks, trying to find textbooks that are at the library and put them on hold, those are just things. And so I just think everyone is so engaged and so really into this conversation. So we really appreciate that, because we know it is 9:14, but if it's okay with y'all, we're going to keep this conversation going. But we really want you all to put some comments in the chat, some questions, like what are some things you're curious about? What are some things you want to know more as we move forward? Because like we said, this conversation does not stop here. Like, what are some things you're struggling to still grasp? What do you want to do? What do you want to learn more about? Put that in the chat box. Or even just say, hey, can you call on me? We'll let you speak and everything. Because we had Haley say, a question is, as someone who will be a member of the orientation team this fall, how can we best create inclusion in 1787 groups and make that discussion with incoming students? And that itself is so good. And Haley, for you even taking that courage to really step up and say, what can I do to really do that? And so for me, I was an OPA last year, which was which great best experience in my life. But something I really made myself do in my groups and a few other OPAs, I think there's some in here, we always said, what are we going to do to challenge students today? Right? Because in my groups, I know what it felt like to be the only person of color in the group. I know what that felt like. And so for me, it was like, what are we going to do to challenge our students today? And sometimes I had to just kind of come aware that some of the students that are coming in with ideas that they don't care about this. For them, like, they aren't thinking about this and they don't want to think about that. But for me, my responsibility isn't to please the majority. My responsibility was to please the minority and make sure they're heard in the room, no matter who felt uncomfortable. And so for me, I would always read the room. As soon as I got my groups, I would read the room. And I think that's something everyone keeps saying now, but like, if you don't know what that is, it's really kind of taking invoice and inventory of who's in your room, what experiences do you think they may have, and what can you do to elevate others that may be in the background to kind of come forward, right? And so for me, I would always just try to have personal relationships, which is really hard when everything is virtual right now. And I would also always acknowledge you cannot know it all, but it's acknowledging where you are. And so being vulnerable, I love that, Kat, Dion, being vulnerable with who you are. And I think always sharing your experiences helps others kind of, okay, they're brave, they're acknowledging things, I feel comfortable too. And so for me, I would do it simply is I would let people ask me questions. And so Dion talked earlier about like Rush Week. And so at JMU, we're a predominantly white institution. So of course, for Rush Week is for the NPC fraternities and sororities. And so myself, I'm actually a part of a NPHC sorority, right? And so when people ask me about that, I mean, automatically people kind of were asking about Rush Week in that sense. So how can I join a sorority? And I knew they probably were talking about an NPC sorority, but to be inclusive, I always made sure I included information on African American and other minority fraternity and sororities, because it's like you don't know who's in that room. And one day I did that, and I told someone like, yeah, and you don't have to be African American to be in my organization or anyone's organization. And she was white, and she said, oh my goodness, you don't? And I said, no, like you can be any race, ethnicity, we don't discriminate. And so even just sharing that information, she was like, I'm so interested. Can you take me somewhere? And I said, oh yeah, I'll take you to meet the Greeks, like so you can see everything and you just get a taste of it. And literally simple like that of just making sure when you give answers that you're always thinking, okay, like not just the average stereotypical answer, but how can I really read the room and really make sure I'm answering everyone, even though if everyone's white in my space and everyone's white here, you can't always assume that. They need to know, they need to be aware. And it's just kind of even just like that, being vulnerable in those relationships.
Might I build off that?
Of
You,
course.
as a 1787 tour guide, you're kind of signing up, right, to really sell JMU, right? Like this is the greatest place on earth. You should be here. Purple and gold, we bleed it, right? So if you're looking for ways to make your group more inclusive, present yourself as a true ally, right? So know your resources, like Aaliyah was saying. But if you don't know everything there is to know, if you didn't know that there was CMIS, or you didn't know that there was some program coming up, then say that, but then also tack on that you won't rest, or you will do your best to find out, and that if nothing else, if you don't feel comfortable going to anybody else, we can hang out, we can do stuff. Like you're signing up for that. And so assuming a little extra responsibility so that all of your students feel inclusive, I mean, it's kind of part of the job, second mile service.
That's so good. And I think one thing is too with that, making sure you're not throwing it all on an apartment or saying, oh, you want diversity, go to CMIS. Oh, you want this? Oh, here, go to that. And making sure that you're also acknowledging that I play a part in this. So how can I make you feel comfortable? And so even sometimes I would ask people, what can I do to make you feel comfortable? What do you need? Or what are you curious about? And like what Dion said, you may not know all the answers, but just understanding that your place is really just to support them and lead them so they can make those decisions themselves. And so that's so important too. But if anyone has any, oh yeah, of course. You're totally fine. I can't see everyone's like screen on here, so I just see Dion.
Are you in speaker view?
Yeah, I think that's why I'm about to change it. Good point.
Gallery, so you can
I'm still learning too. But does anyone have any other questions or comments or anything that you want to discuss while we're in this space?
It's kind of surreal. It feels a little raw, right? Like just sitting there. It's kind of like, dang, we talked about a lot.
Josephine, if you want, you can chat your question, or you could unmute yourself and do it as well.
Hey, girl. Sorry, my sister just walked in her cap and gown.
Hey, sis.
Hi. I'm in a meeting.
Can I just say hi really quickly?
Yeah. Yeah, is that a graduation cap?
Congratulations!
Congratulations!
All right, bye guys.
Bye, Madeline. Well, yeah, she's graduating tomorrow. But okay, so I have a question that it's gonna be awkward to ask, but I feel like I need to ask it. So I am trying to help educate my family and my friends because I live in a predominantly white area back at home, and I don't know how to get the message that I understand without sounding like, one, I have white savior complex, because that's a big issue, and two, how do I get family members to understand white privilege or just like people around me in my own community, because I live in Richmond, and I'm about 15 minutes from what's been going on, and my neighborhood, they keep saying all these things that I just get so angry at, and I just don't know what to say without screaming. So how would I start those kinds of conversations, and how would I have them without belittling other people as well?
All right, so two things come to mind from in my experience. So I'm gonna type in. There's the name of the article that I was talking about. Look that up, and it was written by a guy named Dyer. Part of his name was Dyer. See, I messed this up in my video. I don't know the first name, or I don't know if that's that is the first name. I don't know the last name. Dyer, that's a part of it, right? But it's going to be awkward to talk about that again, going back to what Dr. Miller was saying, because you don't actively have to do this normally. I kind of equate you having to talk to other white people about this stuff the same way that I would have to talk to somebody, a person of color, about saying the N-word. We're discussing something so deeply rooted into our culture, and for yours, we could say it's color blindness. Like we've heard so many people say, like, I don't see color. That is kind of what you're tackling. And so to tackle that is to it almost feels like you're dismantling all that you know, like all that y'all have been living by. And then you're saying your savior complex is like, well, I know what they feel like. And I'm trying to tell you, I think at some points you're just gonna have to come off that way. Cause I know that I've also had that same experience. You ever, or if you've ever heard somebody be referred to as like an Oreo or something like that, right? Like too white for the blacks, too blacks for the whites. Like you kind of get put in this category when everybody is picking sides, when you say, I'm not gonna pick a side. Like I'm for both. I'm here to represent whoever is not being equally or equitably represented. So you're gonna be ostracized for that. And I think the same way that we've been able to have conversations and it's gotten more comfortable and it's gotten easier, that'll happen in your family. It's just gonna take time. It's gonna take a lot more time.
That's so good. I'm actually biracial, so I have a lot. My mom's white and her family's white, but clearly I look a little browner. And I'm actually more brown than my brother. So growing up, I've kind of always felt like kind of isolated because I've never really actually identified as white because I can't really pass as white. And of course, for like my brother and everything's always been different for him. But even in my family, I've had like family say to me, like, Aaliyah, why are you thinking this way? And I'm like, what do you mean? And so for me, it's always been so hard because it's just when they're your family, because you want to love them, you want to care for them, you just want them to be better and you want to educate them. But something all you can really do, like he's saying, like it's going to be so hard, but just sticking to that. And they're going to share resources at the end for everyone as well. But even like you can't change them in a day. That's just what I've had to learn. And so now for some of my family members, I just love them kind of at a distance. I can't change you at a day. This is what I believe. Like I know this is right, and this is what everyone needs to understand. And so it's been so hard, especially when it's family and friends they really love and care about, because you just want them to understand and you just want them to kind of be better as a person and kind of be that thing. Because I live in Richmond as well. And my actual best friend was arrested in tear gas 2 days ago for peacefully protesting. And she is biracial as well. And she actually has a lot more fair skin. So a lot of people always look at her and they say, you're not black, you're not this, you're not that. And so for situations like this, it is so hard when it's hitting so close to home, like it is in Richmond. But just knowing every single day, just make that effort. And then even if you have to set new boundaries with people so they kind of understand you a little bit better and things like this. But knowing you're not alone because everyone's on this journey together.
Nicely said.
Thank
Maya,
you.
You wanted
Yeah,
to
of course. Yeah, Maya, do you want to go ahead?
Josephine, first, I just want to say thank you because although you're frustrated, you're still trying your best. And at the end of the day, when you lay your head, no one is going to be 100% with you. Maybe they're going to be 100% against you, and that's still okay. When Dion brought up the whole Oreo thing, I kind of just had a spark in me. So growing up, being in middle school, being in high school, I was around a bunch of diverse people, and I I didn't feel weird. Like, yeah, there was times I did feel weird, but I was raised to still feel comfortable in that room because I still have every equal opportunity to be in that room. With being in orientation this summer, I always thought, I think they just have me because they want to meet the minimum, and that's not it. And you shouldn't feel like you have to force it down your family's throat, because they're going to understand it one day and maybe they don't, but you get it. And you have so many envelopes of opportunity to spread your awareness to other people. I had to have a difficult conversation the other night with one of my best friends from home, because the only thing she brought up about this whole thing was the rioting and how destroying stores isn't the answer. And two of her best friends, two of her people that she wants to be her bridesmaids, are Black women. And I took a minute to take a step back and not reply so soon, because I knew that it was going to be anger within the response. And I gave it to her, but I also used examples as if you can buy a car maybe before I can, or you can get signed to a loan before I can, because of things that I can't control. And with that, you can't control how your family's going to feel about it, but I think you're doing great with the direction that you're at. But also at the end of the day, make sure you're taking care of yourself too. Being in women of color, like Aaliyah said, you want to be that first person of helping with spreading the diversity and things like that. But the more you want to fight for things, you're beating yourself up as well. And we may not see it because we're so rattled with wanting to make change. And I think just you wanting a difference, I'm trying to get this right. And that's another thing, we may not have the right answer every time. I've had bumped heads with people who look like me and almost got called whitewashed. And it's just we're in a battle all together. And the fact that you want to start another battle within me and you, I got to take a step back. And if you have to take a step back, that is A-okay. But that's all I'm going to say, because I don't want to go on a rampage. So, yeah.
Talk your stuff, man. I love it. I love it. I agree.
That was so good. I actually told Maya this privately, but I think everyone needs to hear it. Everyone is always here for a reason. And so I love how Dion said Michael helped him really understand you don't need a position to kind of, make change and have these values. And it honestly just starts with your values. It's the fact that you're starting these conversations and going out of your comfort zone. And so really make sure you're taking care of yourself within that, because it can be so draining and so hard, but you're trying with all you can.
I was having a conversation one time with my roommate, and we were talking about, this was a year and some change ago, we were talking about women's rights, right? And I was talking about them getting equal pay. And to tack on to Aaliyah's point about the values, I got him, so he was white, right? I got him so rattled up because I was so firm in what I was saying. And what I was saying was rooted in something that made so much sense, right? There was no way that you could fight against having equity, having equality in positions where people are doing the exact same work, and really where one of them biologically has to deal with more stuff in the month. They don't make as much or more. What can you say? And so then he tried to go and change the scenarios. And well, what if we were back in cave times and they had to run away from a tiger? We're not there. What does that have to do with anything? That has nothing to do with anything. And so you, in these conversations, Josephine, you might start seeing what we see on the other side when people's arguments and their ideologies start unraveling. They start saying some of the craziest stuff. And I hope you don't lose ties with family or friends because you're firm in your stance, but that might happen. And beware that if the conversation, when you're talking about this stuff, gets changed to, well, if this was the case, well, what if we were back here? What do you think? Well, if the situation was reversed, y'all would actually be doing this. Any of that, they've lost. They're at a loss for words, because that's just irrational. Your values are what is substantial.
Yeah, that's started happening today. We went on a walk and it just got real bad downhill from there. So I've been upstairs for a while tonight.
Hey, that's okay. Make sure you eat, because that's important. You need to eat.
Yeah, take care of yourself through all that, because it gets so hard. But I always tell people, you really cannot win people over in a day, but just each day kind of sprinkle something new on them. And, maybe one day they'll come around, but take space for what you need. But it's really awesome that you're doing all that.
I'm just looking back at the chat, because I know that people were sending things as we were talking. So I'm looking at Caitlin's response where she says she's sending articles and creating conversation. I think that's pretty cool.
That's really cool.
You know, you look up a resource, you see something on IG, you don't have to necessarily take your opinion to someone as much as you just have to present something that is thought-provoking and just listen, you know? And then on top of that, tacking on, Michael was saying, like, rather than try to convince, I just offer what I've learned. Like, that at some point, that's all you can do is do your best to offer the resources. Now, contrary to that, and I'm watching for more questions, people based on, contradictory to that, we all follow rules or abide by certain things because somebody said this is the way we do it, right? In class, at the beginning, or at least, you know, K through 12, we're going to, first 5 minutes, stand up for the Pledge of Allegiance. And as we do this, we are creating solidarity in our country, right? Building up patriotism. Somebody said to do that. Now, did it happen immediately by everybody that heard that? No. But the more people did it, the more it became, okay, this is what you're supposed to do. So while I don't agree that you can't control people, you can't change people, you can set yourself up and set structures in place, I believe, that kind of calling people in rather than calling them out. You end up looking weird or you're the outcast because you don't seem as inclusive as the rest of us. I don't have to necessarily call you out that, hey, you're not being this way. But if I, you know, if I try to bring you into a conversation and you show me that you're not really paying attention, well, the rest of us can say, hey, we don't necessarily need to worry about you right now. I'm on a mission I do stuff like this because I want to put out more of how things should be. And as I put out what I think how things should be, more people might say, oh yeah, I agree with that. And then they might start instituting some sustainable lifestyle changes that make this once thought ideology, random thought in my head, an actual thing. I know that somebody told me how to use like Olarks. Oh, I'm sorry, wait a second, let me read. Okay, got you. I'm just being told by my producers backstage that I have to wrap up, you know, possibly. People time is important. We're paying a lot of people, paying them by the hour, not by the conversation. So there are some things that I've been told that I now institute in my life as changes, as real ways of living. And so just continue to do that. That's all I'm trying to say. Continue to do that, and it'll make people who aren't doing it eventually be outcast.
Yeah, really quickly, if I can, Ryan put in a good comment. So basically, he was just saying like people kind of act based upon like what they know. And so it's so cool to say this, but I studied sociology in undergrad because I graduated, and so it was my minor. And so with that though, really what you really learn is people are socialized to think how they are. And so this is like kind of like a good example. So for like a lot of first years, I know for me, you come in kind of thinking your ideology is focused because of your family, your friends, your high school, your hometown, where you're from, right? Like that's where you kind of come in. And so I literally came into JMU with so many different ideas and so many different views, right? Because like that's where I was kind of conformed to. I mean, I grew up with a white parent, things like that. So of course I'm gonna think a certain way. And then when you're kind of exposed to different perspectives, like you were saying, it's that diversity aspect. A different person from a different atmosphere, a different family, they kind of change your entire perspective because you start seeing things differently. And so it was really good. Someone saying, like just in an article, you don't have to convince them, but give them another perspective. And that's why I think it is so important to make sure you're always checking who are you hanging out with. And so I told myself this year for JMU, when I was student body president, I was going to challenge myself to go to 2 different programs each month. And so that doesn't seem like a lot, but I always went to programs that, of course, focus on minority students. So for me, I was like, what can I do to not go to just programs focused on minority students, but another perspective that I don't have in my life at all? And so maybe that would be like based on orientation and sexuality and things like that. But what can you do to really challenge your viewpoint every single day? And that's what I try to do. And so that's where the idea really comes from is, of course, socially and culturally, you're always going to have that perspective you grew up with. But that is why you really have to kind of take it upon yourself to diversify who you're around, diversify what you're reading, the news you're watching, and all of those things so you can really get another perspective, because then you kind of start living by that. Hopefully that was a good paraphrase, Ryan. If it wasn't, just let me know what you think.
And apparently he does too. I'm trying to read this. It's pressure to try to read while people are watching you. So I'm like, I'm rereading the same sentence over and over.
It's so much pressure. Virtual is just so much pressure.
Get it fast enough so it's like it's digestible. It's content. People want it now. All right.
And Sarah went deep on y'all too, so there's a lot there to get through.
Well,
Yeah,
let's
I'm
all take,
sorry,
like,
sorry
2 or 3
about that. I went very, very in length. I can read it out loud if you want me to.
Yeah,
That,
can you read it out loud?
yeah. Do
Yeah,
that.
yeah. So as I've chatted with white friends and family and I see anger, frustration rising, I notice that they are expressing intense responses because their affections are attached to it. We respond out of where our values stem from. So part of that conversation with white friends requires listening to their experiences and associations with race. They may have pressure points that you need to be patient with before they can accept another way of thinking. I think it's incredibly frustrating, but being patient and consistent with conversations is healthy. And when things get anger-filled, acknowledge that the conversation isn't productive anymore and step back until all parties are in a much more stable place of mind.
Yeah. Sounds like wise words. You've tried, I'm guessing you've had a lot of experience in conversations like this?
just a few, just a couple. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate your feedback, your insight. Like,
Yeah.
sometimes it's hard on the other side, like when a white person starts talking about their experiences with race and identity, and they're, they just to hear them talk about it, I'm like, is this a sob story? Like, why should I care? But that same, it's funny because I think people, when they jump in between cultures, they think the laws for the conversation change. But this compassion, this empathetic listening that you're talking about is what both of us need. Because if I never can listen to you and the struggles that you have when it comes to having these conversations, well, then we're not going to ever have a good conversation, because I'm always going to dismiss what you're saying, because you'll never know what it's like. You'll never know what it's like to have this oppression on you, to be looked at this way. But that's just spite. And that's what I'm saying when I mean, like, we shouldn't always live to retaliate. We have to be better. So I wholeheartedly agree.
Yeah, Dion, if I could add to that, I think the space for allyship with that is that those are conversations that, as a white woman, I can be having those conversations because I'm not dealing with the racial trauma that a person of color might be having. So I recognize that I have the ability to have more compassion because I'm not physically tied to oppression that you all might be. And so I think as a white woman, like, that's a privilege that I have, to be able to have a little bit more patience because I'm not operating out of a space of trauma. It's still very, very frustrating and it's really hurtful, but I think that's where my allyship can come out, because I'm better able to have those conversations, even though they're incredibly frustrating. So I think that's where I would just encourage people. I know it can be really disheartening, but if you are white, have those conversations, continue to have them, and be patient with yourself and others, and just go at a slow pace, because I think that's really, the slow and steady is kind of what gets things done.
Definitely. To be discounted or looked at as lesser because of your identity or what you think, it sucks. It really does suck. And I really don't wish it on anybody, but it happens, sadly. Gosh, I don't even, hey, like I said, it's real. It's raw right now. This is surreal. We're having a really good conversation. There's a lot of people in this chat right now that have a lot of influence across JMU and in just various social spheres. So this, I know, will generate far wider than this Zoom. So I'm just kind of taking that all in, right? Because there have been times where I'm talking to people, I'm putting out my opinion, I'm telling them, which, by the way, there is stigma and there are things in our society that says I shouldn't be even putting out my opinion in the first place, my feelings in the first place. Because I mean, men don't do that. One, Black men especially are not docile. They don't use their words. They're aggressive. There are things that I'm overcoming to even talk. So to have people here is just, yes.
It's just
More-
so interesting to me. Sorry, I could say, and then Maya, please share your thing. It's just so interesting to me because I've hosted, and my roommate Jasmine's actually here, so shout out to Jasmine. But we've hosted so many dialogues before to like kind of start these conversations. So after the blackface incident happened at JMU, we hosted this big dialogue for everyone to come together and talk. And it's just so interesting to me to see how many I just hate, but it's true. But like white people that are here, right? For most times, we always have events at JMU that always just people of color always there. Same people of color, same faces. Everyone already kind of knows these things, and so it just makes me curious. Like, I wonder if these things are like almost easier virtual than in person, or like what can we do to really encourage? Like, it's so much courage for you all to join this program tonight. What can we all do to really encourage, more students to really be involved and dive into these conversations? Because it's just so nice to see you all really trying and doing all these things. And again, it's like, what can you do to really, get that other group to really be in here and have these conversations? It's just interesting, a thought, but yeah. Maya, please share what you wanted to share.
Yeah, I kind of just wanted to say that having the conversations are difficult, but I think seeing the emotion behind it is going to get more than 1,000,001 words out. Personally, my brother, one of my best friends that my mom gave me, thankfully, he lives in San Jose, California, and he went out to protest the other day. And when I tell you that I was sobbing, I was frustrated, I was proud, and so many other emotions for at least 3 hours sitting on my bed just wondering, do I have to accept the fact that something might happen to him? Because he's trying to put his word out. And he's fine. But there was just so many thoughts in my head. I was like, he's so strong. I want to be that strong one day. Just so many multiple things. And a lot of my friends who didn't say much about the situation at first, my phone was roaming with it. And they were like, I never really knew what to say until I saw your emotion. And you mean so much to me. And I need to finally accept that this is an issue. And a lot of people are scared to talk about it. A lot of people are uncomfortable because they don't wake up every day and wonder, if I go out to pick up Starbucks or something, can I make it home? And although you're frustrated, or I'm trying to find the words right now, Lord help me. If you're frustrated or if you're confused on how to have these stories, emotion is going to say everything for you. And, they're going to go to sleep and they might not agree. But I think that something is going to spark with people and they're going to realize why this matters. And they are going to celebrate the 4th of July soon. But you know what? America always says, land of the free, home of the brave. Well, they need to be brave enough to realize that this nation, there are issues and people just cannot graze around it. They can't just scratch the surface. You need to be deeper on it. And I'm thankful and beyond grateful that my brother did that and that I can say, I'm proud of him and he made his voice be heard, but it shouldn't have to take that for people to understand it.
You keep saying you're trying to find the right words, but I think you're doing a very great job.
I'm trying. The dictionary.
Got you. Look, I'm gonna keep flashing back to it because repetition. You know how they on commercials they'll keep saying the telephone numbers over and over and over again. Let's keep going back to this. Aaliyah, to say white person, like to start her thing, she was like, I don't want to say it, but white people, right? Like that's how awkward it is. That's how hard this stuff is. So to be a person of color and to do this, you're using a whole new level of power that we haven't had access to. We have not historically had access to this. So embrace it. We are, as we telling white people to embrace the awkwardness of the conversation, we also need to do the same. But I feel like it's starting to flow off the tongue. White. It should be normal. It should get like that. Dr. Miller, I see you unmuted yourself. You about to?
Well, I just want to say one quick thing. A couple things actually. One, I just really appreciate you and Dion, you and Aaliyah doing this tonight. I think we need this and we needed this and we will continue to need this and to continue to have these conversations. So I think I checked quickly with the producers of the show and they're comfortable if we do this next week and maybe the week after and maybe it's the rest of the summer that we have these conversations and do them this way. One of the people who I love and respect the most in the world her name is Dr. Grace Henry. and she's a colleague from mine at my previous institution, George Washington University. She created a program called Real Conversations back in the day, where it was about race and ethnicity and real hard conversations. And I'm not trying to change the name of the show. I'm just saying, I think that there's an opportunity here, and I don't think the worst thing we can do right now is say, oh, great, thanks, glad we had a conversation, doesn't everybody feel better? This took us a long time to get to this place in our world and in our culture and our campus community. You don't fix that in a week. So I guess I wanted to ask if people were up for the two of you coming back. We had other students that can be hosts as well, and continue to use this space in this way going forward, because I just think, I know I need it. I have a lot to learn. I think our campus community needs it. I think our country needs it. I think our world needs it. And I'm not saying we're going to change the world, but we're going to start changing our corner of that world through conversations like that. If you all are up for that, I'd like to sort of put that on the table as an opportunity for you all, but for everyone else on the call and everyone who's not on the call that should be on this call.
I'll go first. Yeah, I mean, why not? Like, it's kind of crazy. Again, I was at JMU for 5 years, and I was a part of a lot of these initiatives or conversations, like Aaliyah said. I mean, it's only but so many of us who were active in this stuff, and you're probably going to see us multiple times. So even when it's past my time on campus, to still be able to affect change in a place like this is a lot of people. Man, of course, I'm down. I'm down.
You already know me, so you already know I'd be down.
Yes. I want to send out. Okay, here's how we want to do this. I'm getting a little tired. I'm not gonna lie. We've done a lot of talking. I've done a lot of talking, right? So I want to wrap things up, come to like a nice little end here at 10 o'clock. But because we're gonna pick things back up, I want to send out all of like my social media and stuff like that. And I mean, I have my own platform from this. So like, I'd love to do this. I also want to have conversations on my own. So I'll give you other avenues to get in contact with me, and we'll get all of this stuff situated, right? But for now, while I get all my stuff straight, I'm sending it to Sierra for some talks about some resources.
Yeah, thanks everyone for your input and things that you had to say. Thanks Dion and Aaliyah for your free work here that you have done. We definitely appreciate you too. So going into some resources that will hopefully make some things easier for you in terms of having conversations and ways that you can be an ally or even fight for your community, right? So the first one that we have is from the National Museum of African American History and Culture. If you have not been there, I know it's hard to get a ticket. I know, trust me, but if you can get there, get there. You need at least 5 hours probably to get through it, so just do it. It's amazing. But I'm going to share my screen so you all can see these things real quick. Okay. So the first one we have here is a website. I think someone is going to share the links in the comment section. The first one we have, of course, is from the museum, and it's talking about race. So it says, talking about race, although hard is necessary, we're here to provide tools and guidance to empower your journey, inspire conversation. So I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but as you can see, it has plenty of resources, ways that you can navigate through it on your own time. So yeah, but here's that. It's pretty long, a lot of good stuff. Okay, for the next one, let's see, so I'm trying to navigate my screen here. The next one is actually from JMU Libraries, Anti-Racism in Action. These are the books that we have here at JMU that see ebooks available with the JMU login. And then there's a number, like, I see they'll go through, there's a number of different ones that you can pick from. I know I personally have started reading more Black literature and just books, centering around justice in terms of the United States. So, and then this, as you can see, has different streaming movies and videos available as well. So we will talk more about like videos and things that you can watch later on through another resource. Okay. This next one, sorry, I have a dog. Lily, oh my gosh, stop. Sorry. Stop it. Okay. This one is anti-racism resources specifically for white people. You know, so it says this document is intended, oh no, stop. This document is intended to serve as a resource to white people and parents to deepen our as in their anti-racism work. If you haven't engaged in anti-racism work in the past, start now. Feel free to circulate this document on social media and with your friends, family, and colleagues. I know I personally have seen this going around a lot. I have not looked at it because I am not white, but I mean, I think this is something that can be beneficial for everyone, but specifically for white people. And it's a very helpful list, as you can see. Okay, the next one. Pull up a slide here. Hello, sorry. View. So this one starts off with what you can watch. I know most of us do not have Netflix, or most of us do have Netflix, but some don't. If you haven't done your free trial yet, you can go ahead and do that for however many days. No one's judging. So one that is really imperative is 13th. I cannot stress this documentary enough, and I mean that with my entire being. The first time I watched 13th, I was, not gonna lie, I was very angry. I was very upset, but it was something that you need to know. Everyone needs to know this. I have told people for years, if you have not watched this, you need to watch it. So if you have not watched it, I encourage that as well. American Son, that just came out, that has Kerry Washington in it. It was very different because I've never seen anything from that perspective before. Check it out. And then Dear White People. I love that series. There's a movie and there's actually Netflix series. So you can watch both of those. They're both, oh man, I just really like them. They're both really great. If Beale Street Could Talk, I have not seen this one, but I have heard great things about it, so check that out as well. King in the Wilderness, haven't seen that either, but hey, check it out. And then there's See You Yesterday on Netflix. I've seen that one. That was very powerful. I believe, if I have it right, that was about a young Black girl who's living in New York. One of her friends or her brother gets shot and killed by the police, and she makes a time machine to go back in time to try to save her brother. So that was very moving. And then, of course, the one I just watched this yesterday, The Hate U Give. No, it was the day before. Hopefully because I wanted to cry, because I needed to cry to release the pain on my chest. So I watched The Hate U Give. I know there's a book. If you prefer reading books than to movies, this is one that you can do. You'll see when you watch it. And then When They See Us. This was very major as well. You've heard about, in pulp culture, they're known as the Central Park Five, but we now know them as the Exonerated Five. They were the group of they were students, young Black children, teenagers, who were blamed for a crime that they did not commit, and they spent years and years in prison for this crime. And some of them even were in solitary confinement as children and as teenagers. So that is definitely something I would love for y'all to watch these if you can. In terms of reading, so we have White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo. I actually got the chance to meet her when I was an undergrad. She came to our campus and she spoke, and I was like her little assistant for the day. But she is a white woman, and she is a professor, I believe. And so this is a staple, White Fragility. And then there's How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram X. Kendi. I think it's very important that we realize that we're not only should we be non-racist, we need to be anti-racist, right? Being anti-racist is putting in the work. When someone says something that's not okay, we need to make sure that we counter that and be it known that we are anti what they said. And then The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander. That's a very big one as well. And then there's Divided Sisters by Midge Wilson and Kathy Russell. The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. Toni Morrison, she is a legend. May she rest in peace. Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. That is also a very popular book. There's also a movie adaptation. You can access it on YouTube actually for free. They Can't Kill Us All by Wesley Lowry. I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings by Maya Angelou. That's a classic. Fatal Invention by Dorothy Roberts. Locking Up Our Own by James Forman. The Miner's Canary by Lanny Gunner and Gerald Torres. And The Wretched of the Earth by France Fanon. So if you're a big reader, that's a good list for you. And then listening in terms of podcast and many different things. So it's called 1619. It's from the New York Times. And that refers to, of course, the year that the first enslaved African, I think we should also be very careful about the language that we used, is that these were not slaves. They were people who were enslaved. So when we refer to the people in this country who built everything for free, we should say that they are enslaved Africans, not slaves. And then the next one is About Race. And then the next one is Code Switch, which is on NPR. I have not listened to that, but just by the title, I think I know what they're talking about. So that sounds good as well. And then Intersectionality Matters, hosted by Kimberly Crenshaw. Kimberly Crenshaw is very vital in like the Black Lives Matter movement, as well as just justice work. So she's a great one. Momentum, a Race Forward podcast. And then there's Pod for the Cause, and that's by the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights. And then there's Pod Save the People by Crooked Media. And then there's Seeing White. And then there's Parenting Forward podcast episode 5 Pandemic Parenting Lessons with Cindy Wang Brandt. And then also Fair of the Free Child podcast. So if you're a podcast person, like to listen to things, this is good stuff for you. Okay, now act. What can you do to act on this? You can text Floyd in all caps to 55156 to demand all 4 officers involved with Floyd's death be charged and arrested. So far, there has only been 1 arrested, but we all know that there were other people involved, so we need justice for that. You can call DA Michael Freeman at 612-324-4499, again, to demand all 4 officers be charged and arrested. I believe he's the district attorney of Minneapolis. You can also contact your Congress people and ask them to support Representatives Ayanna Pressley and Ilhan Omar's resolution condemning police brutality. So Ilhan Omar and Ayanna Pressley, I'm sure many people know who they are, but if you don't, they are very prominent members of Congress. They are in there to make change, and they are women of color who are proud about it. Okay. Then also for donation. So there's the Black Visions Collective, and that website is blackvisionsmn.org. And then there's another one, Reclaim the Block, and that's reclaimtheblock.org. I know this is a lot of information, so I'm trying to not go too fast. Then there's the Know Your Rights Camp, and that's knowyourrightscamp.com. Speaking of knowing your rights, I encourage everyone to please know your rights, just in terms of, I know people who keep like little tiny constitutions in their glove compartment in case they get pulled over and the cop tries to pull a fast one on them, and they're like, nope, look what I got. So that's important if you want to do that. The MinnesotaFreedomFund.org, that's really big right now for obvious reasons. George Floyd Memorial Fund, that is a GoFundMe account. So make sure don't be tricked by any fake GoFundMe accounts, because that happens sometimes on accidents, There's Campaign Zero, join campaignzero.org. Black Lives Matter, blacklivesmatter.com. That's speaks for itself, I believe. And there's Communities United Against Police Brutality. That's cuapb.org. And then there's I Run with Maud, which of course, another Black man who was unjustly murdered in the street because he decided to walk down or run around a neighborhood. So that's something. So his GoFundMe is there. Then of course there's the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. You know, in the last year or two, I've come across people who don't know what the NAACP is. So I'm just going to explain that real quick. So the NAACP is a National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. It was actually founded and started in 1909 by a group of Black people. And ever since then, they have been fighting for justice and equality, specifically in the Black community, and also, of course, for anything that we find unjust. It's actually an organization that I am a part of, and I was the education committee chair in undergrad, so it's definitely an organization that I support 100%, and they are the movers and shakers, and they have been for generations. And then the next one is the American Civil Liberties Union, better known as the ACLU. They also are very important in terms of getting things done, affecting policy and changes that happen. Another thing so I am from Houston, Texas, just like George Floyd is from Houston, Texas. So I also wanted to include, I'm sure y'all can probably see it down here, but so the Thurgood Marshall School of Law is it's at Texas Southern University, which is the only HBCU in Houston. Texas has around 5 HBCUs, but this is, I think, the two major ones are Texas Southern University as well as Prairie View A&M University, which is just outside of Houston. But so their law school their clinical legal studies program has a Thurgood Marshall School of Law bail fund to provide money to protesters in Houston who have been incarcerated and are awaiting bond. I had friends who were at the protest. Of course, I'm not in Houston. I am still in Harrisonburg, but I have had friends who were there, and there are 60,000 people there today marching with his family, as well as many congresswomen and men. Sheila Jackson Lee, she is very popular in the state of Texas in the Black community. She is a congresswoman, and Congressman Al Green was there as well. But so everything, and it was a peaceful protest, but there were still people unfortunately arrested. So you can text bail to 41444 to help out with the TSU's bail fund. And then here are some sites that you can follow on social media. And these are, of course, there are plenty of other ones, but these are some ones that we have here. There's at The Conscious Kid. You can follow that page. At Black Lives Matter, and it's BLK, not BLACK. There's the NAACP, and then you can follow ACLU_nationwide. And then back to the NPR, we got NPR Code Switch. And then next one is Privtoprog, PRIVTOPROG. And then we have, I'm not sure how to pronounce this, so I'll just spell it out, at RENIEDDOLODGE. As well as here, some JMU resources. So we have JMU CMIS, JMU NAACP, WOC_JMU, and that is Women of Color is the WOC. And then we have JMU_BSA. BSA is Black Student Association. And then we have JMU SMO, which is Students for Minority Outreach. And then there's JMU ICGC. ICGC is the Intercultural Greek Council. So that houses the predominantly and historically African-American, Latinx, and Asian Greek fraternities and sororities. Then for our last column, we have Layla FSAAD. And then the next one is Ibra MXK. Next one is I Am Rachel Ricketts. And then there's The Great Unlearn. And then there's Check Your Privilege, check being spelled CK. And then the last one finally being No White Saviors. So back to that white savior complex again. But those are the resources that we have found for y'all, and we hope that y'all can use them to better our society and to help out with the cause that, and I think it's important that we want to look back however many years from now and think to ourselves, was I on the right side of history or was I on the wrong side of history? And what did I do to ensure a better society for not only for myself, but for my descendants if I choose to have children, or even for my family members? So this is something that's very important. And I think it is something that moving forward, we should really think about it. So that's all I have. I don't know if, thank you, Dion and Aaliyah, once again. I don't know if you had any closing words or anybody wanted to say anything before we hop off.
Follow me. Put my information in the chat. Save it. Follow me. Subscribe. Love to talk to you.
There you go.
My biggest thing, oh, sorry, Dion. It's so virtual, I never know. But my biggest thing is make sure you all take care of yourself during this time. It's so hard, and like mental health is so important. That's something, of course, you want to keep fighting and keep advocating, but you can't do that if you aren't taking care of yourself. So do that. And of course, if anyone wants to connect with me, you can find me _Allie Mclean. I love to connect.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much. We're going to go ahead and close out. I want y'all to have a good night tonight. Get some sleep. If you haven't ate today, eat something, take a shower, make yourself feel nice, treat yourself, however they may look. But thank you all for coming to this conversation, and we will see y'all next week.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Okay, I'm friending him right now.